You ever wonder what's really pulling the strings on the world stage? Beyond the day-to-day headlines. There are these powerful, almost invisible forces at work, a constant tug of war between politics and economics. Today, we're going to use the incredible work of political scientist Robert Gilpin to get a much clearer picture of these forces. All right, let's jump right in. To get a handle on our modern world, we're going to do something a little different. We're actually going to go way, way back to one of the most famous stories ever told. Because believe it or not, hidden inside this ancient myth is a secret about how power really works. So the Trojan War, right? We all know the story. The beautiful Helen of Troy gets whisked away, and this huge Greek army sails off to bring her back. It's this epic story of love, of honor, of revenge. But was that really the whole story? Well, this is where Robert Gilpin comes in and just cuts right through the myth. He suggests that, yeah, Helen's face might have been part of the story, but it probably wasn't the main reason for a war that lasted a decade. The real motive was likely something a whole lot more practical. So if you look at it through this lens, the war wasn't really about a person at all. It was about profit. It was about power. It was about controlling a critical piece of economic real estate. And this ancient story reveals a truth that's just as real today. Politics and economics are basically two sides of the very same coin. Okay, so let's fast forward. Let's take that ancient dynamic, power versus profit, and see how it's evolved into what is really the defining conflict of our modern world. This relentless struggle between the state and the market. And that brings us to the field we're really digging into here, international political economy. The core idea is actually pretty simple, but its implications are huge. You just can't truly understand politics if you ignore the economics behind it. And you'll never really get economics if you don't see the political forces that are constantly shaping it. They're locked in this constant dance. A good way to think about it is like they're the two main characters in this big global story we're all a part of. On one side, you've got the state. It's obsessed with borders, with control, with national interest. And on the other side, you have the market, which couldn't care less about borders. It just wants to flow freely, driven by efficiency and exchange. And you can see that contrast crystal clear here. The state, it's all about political order. It's what replaced the old empires and tribes. The market, on the other hand, is all about economic efficiency. It's what took the place of systems like command economies. For centuries, these two have been pushing and pulling against each other, shaping literally everything around us. Okay, so if this conflict is as old as Troy, why is it so important now? What changed? Well, in the last few hundred years, a few things happened that completely changed the rules of the game and basically supercharged the tension between the state and the market. For one, the world got a lot smaller, right? We became way more interconnected through trade and technology. At the same time, regular people started paying way more attention to how the economy affected their daily lives. And they had this big realization: the state can actually step in and move wealth around. All of a sudden, economic problems weren't just fate or an act of God. No, they were seen as the direct result of decisions made by people in power. And what's the result of all that? Well, it's pretty much inevitable. Economic stuff became political stuff, big time. Suddenly, things like trade deficits or currency values weren't just for the business pages anymore. Nope, they became front-page news, the kind of issues that could decide elections and define international relationships. You can really track this whole evolution here. The nation-state pops up in the 16th century and becomes the main way we organize ourselves. Then, after World War II, the U.S. helps create this global economic order, the Bretton Woods system, all about promoting open markets. But then you get to the 1970s, and that whole system starts to crack, leading us into the much more unpredictable world that Gilpin was trying to make sense of. Which brings us to a perfect, massive, real-world example of these forces at work. Because in the late 20th century, the entire economic center of gravity of the planet began to move. Think about it. For centuries, the economic heartbeat of the world was the transatlantic relationship between Europe and North America. But then, a huge shift happened. For the first time in modern history, the amount of trade flowing across the Pacific Ocean actually became greater than the trade flowing across the Atlantic. And right at the heart of this change was a new powerhouse relationship. By the 1980s, if you combine the economies of the United States and Japan, you were looking at a staggering 30% of the entire world's output, just those two nations. This new integrated economy even got its own name, Nichibei. It's a blend of the Japanese words for Japan, Nihon, and America, Daikoko. It really represented a kind of deep economic partnership that the world had never really seen before. So what did this relationship actually look like? Well, it was built on massive amounts of trade, deep alliances between their biggest companies, and, this is key, a tidal wave of Japanese money flowing into the American economy. The old dynamic of the US as the clear superior and Japan as the junior partner, that was fading fast. This was something much more like a partnership of equals. And this is where it gets really important on a global scale. America's power has long been built on the US dollar being the world's main currency. In this new era, it was Japan that became the key partner helping to prop up the value of that dollar, effectively helping to finance America's global position. A geographer named Halford Mackinder basically saw this coming decades earlier. He predicted that global competition would stop being just about military might and would become a relentless struggle for relative efficiency. The Nichibei relationship was the ultimate proof that he was right. So Gilpin's framework gives us this powerful lens to see the world. He saw the rise of the US-Japan partnership as the new core of the global economy. And that leaves us with a critical question for our own time, doesn't it? If that was the defining relationship back then, what is the defining economic relationship that shapes our world now?